All right, sports fans, how's everybody out there doing? William Martin coming at you one more time here on YouTube with another edition of the 300 Pounds of Sports Knowledge Podcast. After enjoying their best playoff run in 20 years, the Minnesota Timberwolves are still just one of five NBA franchises to have never appeared in the NBA Finals. The Timberwolves could not overcome the Dallas Mavericks in the Western Conference Finals as Minnesota was sent home courtesy of Dallas in 5 games. In all, it was still a tremendous run for the T Wolves, but will they be able to learn from this in order to get to that next step, which is, of course, getting to the NBA Finals and ultimately winning an NBA championship? Now, what did we learn this season, and what did we really learn in this postseason run by the Minnesota Timberwolves? First things first, Anthony Edwards is the real deal. I mean, you saw him ball out throughout the regular season, and he took his game to another level here in the playoffs. You think about it, he basically put Minnesota on his back as they swept the Phoenix Suns in round number one. That epic battle that the Timberwolves had with the Denver Nuggets in the second round, and then of course getting the Timberwolves to the Western Conference Finals. But as much talent as Anthony Edwards has displayed, he cannot do it by himself. And I feel like I've said this before, and I'm going to keep on saying it. And unfortunately for Minnesota, it was the same old Karl Anthony Towns as he came up short in those big moments for Dallas. You look at the first 3 games of this series for the Timberwolves, and of course, that was part of the reason why they were down 0-3. Cat combined for 43 points, 45 points, excuse me, in the first 3 games of the series. He got it going in the last 2 games. Stepped up big in game number 4. He had 25 and 5. He had 28 and 12 last night, but honestly, it was too little, too late because we saw Dallas steamroll the Timberwolves, from the opening tip. And of course, Minnesota was never able to recover from that. And at the end of the day, like I've said before, Karl Anthony Towns is just not a good playoff performer. There's no way fans or buts about it. For me, I've said it before and I'll say it again, and I'm not trying to sound like a broken record, but to me, Cat focuses too much on being a perimeter player. 15 feet and in, there's not a lot of people in the NBA who can stop him. But the thing is, if you get a situation where Karl Anthony Towns hits an early 3-point shot, he's going to camp out there by the 3-point line. That's not what the Timberwolves need in order to win. Yeah, it's all nice that the 3-pointer is part of his arsenal. That's fine. But you don't have to make it the primary weapon. And I think that is something that Cat needs to understand going forward if the Timberwolves are going to be able to take that next step. Now, Minnesota was darn good on defense throughout the season. Actually, they were the top defensive team in the NBA during the regular season. It showed up in round one when they swept the Phoenix Suns. It showed up when they needed it to in the second round against the Nuggets, but that was not the case, okay, in the Western Conference Finals against Dallas. You think about it, in the first 2 rounds of the playoffs, okay, the Timberwolves had given up 100 points or more 5 times. And in those games, they were 2-3. You look in this series with Dallas, each game, the Mavericks were able to score at least 100 points on Minnesota. Not only that, but you go back and look at the first 2 rounds of the postseason. They held Phoenix under 100 points 2 times. In each victory over Denver, they held the Nuggets under 100 points with all of that offense that they have. That was not the case against this Dallas Mavericks team. I mean, you look at the Mavericks first and foremost. There's a reason why they're in the NBA Finals now. It's not an aberration. It's you look at it. The Dallas Mavericks have 2 of, if not the 2 best closers in the NBA going. Okay, and I talked about this the other day, where the Mavericks, most importantly, Luka Doncic, took the Timberwolves' heart in game number two. It was one of those scenarios where once he had the isolation with Rudy Gobert, everybody in that arena, Luka knew it, Rudy Gobert knew it, the Mavericks and Timberwolves knew it, what was coming, and they couldn't stop it, and that shot was going in. And from that point, I really do think that Doncic took their heart. But nonetheless, the Timberwolves have to get better on the defensive end on the perimeter, okay? Because it's one of those where you look at this last offseason for Minnesota, they went out there and made the moves to get past the Nuggets, and it showed in the Western Conference semis. But you still got to worry about other teams in that tough conference. And like I said the other day, it's one of those where did Minnesota just use everything up to get past Denver? And like I said, sure, it's fine. You beat the defending champs. I totally get it. It's a reason to be excited. But as the rounds advance, the further you go into the postseason, the tougher it gets. And Dallas was not in the Western Conference Finals by accident. And I think that's something that Minnesota found out firsthand. I gave the edge coming into this series to the Timberwolves because I expected them to use their size advantage. They didn't do that as the Mavericks out rebounded Minnesota throughout this series. And again, I can't harp on it enough. They never had an answer for Luka Doncic and Kyrie Irving. But to their credit, there's a lot of teams around the NBA that have not had an answer for Luka and Kyrie either. For Chris Finch, he just continues to, improve and get the most out of this team. In 3 years with the Timberwolves, he has never had a losing record, and he just led them to the second best regular season mark in franchise history, behind the 58-24 mark when the Timberwolves got to the Western Conference Finals back in 2004. This is going to be a very interesting offseason for the Timberwolves in more ways than one. You look at it, on one hand, you can say, well, all of their young talent is under contract, which it is. I mean, it's one of those where Gobert is signed through next season. He does have a player option for 2026, which I do expect him to exercise because at the end of the day, I don't see a lot of teams around the NBA that are going to be willing to give Rudy Gobert 46 million, 46 and a half million, like he's set to earn for the 2025-2026 season. Carl Anthony Towns is under contract. Ant-Man's extension is about to kick in. You've got veteran Mike Conley under contract, Nas Reed, Jaden McDaniels. Kyle Anderson is a free agent. That's going to be interesting. But the other nugget is this: as of right now, the Timberwolves have close to $186 million committed to player salary next year. We've heard about the headbutting with this ownership group where between Alex Rodriguez, Mark Laurie, and Glenn Taylor, and it's one of those where you've heard the stories where A Rod wants to get them under that additional apron for the salary cap, and like I've been saying, that is going to make things very interesting this summer with that additional apron. As far as how teams go about things. So it's going to be it's going to be interesting to see how the Timberwolves get caught up in that. And it's going to be very difficult because when you've got an ownership group where everybody is not on the same page, it's a problem. And to their credit, the team, the players, the coaches, they were able to, just muffle out all of that outside noise and focus on basketball. But nonetheless, can they do it again for a second year in a row? We've got to wait and see. Like I said, it's an important offseason for the Timberwolves. The Western Conference will once again be tough. And just because you did it this year does not mean you get a free ride to the Western Conference Finals next year. Everybody's going to be gunning for Minnesota. It's going to be interesting to see will they be up for the challenge. You're going to have teams out there that are going to try to get better. Like I said, I really do believe this offseason we're going to see more trades, more player movement than we're accustomed to seeing for several reasons. The salary cap apron, the additional one, as well as the fact that this is a weak draft. So teams that are going to go out there and look to improve, they're going to try to do it through trades. They're going to try to do it through free agency. And it's going to be interesting to see where the Timberwolves fit into all of that. But nonetheless, we do know Anthony Edwards is a real deal. It did not work out for him and the Timberwolves in the series. Credit to Dallas for that, because you look at Ant-Man, every shot, every point that he made, he had to work for throughout this series as a Mavericks defense really focused on him. You look at this Timberwolves team, the talent is there. And I know that people are going to say, well, they're missing something. They have the pieces. Okay. My problem is, again, Carl Anthony Towns, you know, is inconsistent and he's not aggressive enough when the Timberwolves need him to be. Ant-Man is the it factor. Ant-Man is the real deal, but he can't do it by himself. And I don't know if they can get much further with Carl Anthony Towns the way that he plays, as far as getting past the Western Conference Finals, getting to the NBA Finals, and winning an NBA championship. But nonetheless, it was still a strong season for the Minnesota Timberwolves. They have to seize the moment. They don't want to afford to regress, because you look at it, the last time that Minnesota got to the Western Conference Finals was 2004. It took them another 14 years before they even got back to the NBA playoffs, and that's something that they have to avoid. But nonetheless, it was a strong season for Minnesota. Hopefully, for their sake, they can build off of it. So let's see what the T Wolves do over the summer to try to get over that hump and get that first NBA championship. So, folks, that is going to wrap it up. And as always, I want to take this time out to thank all of you for tuning into the 300 Pounds of Sports Knowledge podcast here on YouTube. I want to take this time out to thank all of you fine folks out there for tuning in. And if you haven't already, please feel free to subscribe to this channel. Now, if you're on the X, formerly known as Twitter, please feel free to follow me at 300 Pounds of Sports. And like I always say, if you follow me, it will be my pleasure to follow you right back. There's also the sports discussion group on Facebook at the Sports Depot 365. Now you can check it out. Drop a line to be a part of one of the better sports debating sites going on social media. So once again, fine folks, my name is William Martin, and I am signing off. And I'm saying take care and have yourselves a wonderful day.